This is not love.
This is not love.
This is not love.
This is not love.
This is not love. This is not love.
It was like being trapped, held down, unable to breathe, in a dark and scary place, filled with pain and constant heartbreaking agony. It felt like there was real danger everywhere, and I couldn't let my guards down for a second in case he turned on me, worse still, my children. Even in public, there was a chance of him having one of his turns and me having to deal with the aftermath, then going back home with him, not knowing what he will do next. It was exhausting. It was abuse. Dress it down as mental health problems. Put it down as personality. Call it what you will. It was then and still is abuse. Hours spent trying to understand why. Often using self to blame as an answer, to fix things. Also wondering if other marriages were like this. If so, could I really do this for the rest of my life? At what cost? Of my mental health and safety? I couldn't trust no one. Having been let down by the one person I had given my absolute all. Till death us do part. In sickness and in health. Forsaking all others. A decade later, trust is still a challenge. The need to self-protect when triggers occur will always, and they do occur, will always be ingrained. The panic, the rapid heartbeat, and the sense of fear will fade, but the scars don't. But there is light though now. So much light, and it's bright and sunny and brings with it freedom, self-esteem, confidence and love. It shines through every aspect of my life and makes me happy to be me and proud of overcome those times. Real love and respect start with the journey of feeling those things for yourself. Real love doesn't hurt physically or emotionally. It doesn't cause fear and help us to grow stronger and heals wounds.
My story is bittersweet.
People who know me will not associate my story with the person they see before them. Dynamic, charismatic, energetic, confident, popular, happy, professional businesswoman who has raised 3 amazing children, a good proportion of that time as a single parent. I am a strong, defiant woman who will not allow her past to determine her future. And what was her crime, I hear you ask? I simply fell in love with the wrong man. From the moment I met him, I knew he was a wrong one. My gut told me to run several times, but fear kept me there. Fear of the unknown. Something only survivors of domestic violence will understand. While you're with that person, you know their every move. You can predict what they're going to do. You pick up the vibe and you know where it's going to lead. You learn to live a life of being controlled. And when they're not with you, that's when you're in a dangerous place. While they swan around here, there and everywhere, never really telling you where they are or who they're with, how dare you even ask? While you carry out chores and duties, they call you, text you, question you to the point where you question your own sanity, your own stability. A dark and lonely place, stuck in the rut of a damaging and toxic existence. Existence is panic. It's chaotic. You yearn for calmness, and yet there is always drama. Trauma followed by drama. There's a jungle in your head and it never sleeps, never settles. And it's always your fault. When he strikes you, you made him do it. You led him to the point where he couldn't control himself. You were the one who said too much or didn't do enough. I can count on one hand the number of times he struck me, hit me, pinned me up against the wall by my throat. But the damage that takes a lifetime to heal is the spoken and unspoken dialogue. The feeling of never being good enough, never being a good enough partner, wife, mother. It's that damage you work to heal and sort for years.
I had 2 beautiful children with him. As a mother, it's your duty to protect your babies. He had an affair, many affairs, over many years, until on one occasion he got caught big time. I had the evidence. It was my golden ticket out of this hellhole. Yes, I was granted a divorce, but when I managed to get out, that's when the real hell began. Little did I know then that that taste of freedom, of independence, was double-edged with entrapment. Financially, he'd ruined me. Turned out he hadn't been paying the mortgage for many years and had secured £60,000 worth of debt on our home without me knowing. I had to sell the house fast, coming out homeless with 2 small children in tow and fighting off demands from his debtors. And then he started taking me to court for custody of our children. At one point, I was in court every 6 weeks. There were non-stop accusations. I'd bought the wrong shoes for our daughter. I'd failed to get our young son into the local football club. And the courts allowed it. Initially, he gained limited custody, but the reality of his mental illness came to light one weekend when he grabbed the children, held them in his place of residence, and threatened to commit suicide and possibly take the children with him. Approached by the police and by myself and by social services, he left his property, bundled the children into the car and drove off at high speed. Realising that this might happen, I followed him at high speed for as long as I could, but I lost them. That was at 3 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. They found him and the children at 7 p.m. Those 4 hours were absolute trauma, and by the time the children were in my arms, I felt numb. I fled our hometown the following morning, never to return. I made a home with my children, and their father was sectioned. Children's services supported me, and an alarm was fitted, and I did actually, for the first time in my life, feel safe. But even from his cell, he continued trying to control me, sending me threats, antagonising me, and eventually the whole court drama started again. Over time, he was granted supervised visits while his parents were present, and eventually he was granted unsupervised contact. And that's when the whole grooming began, as insidiously he sought his revenge through our beautiful children. His mission was to take our babies from me, and that's exactly what he did. I will never understand how the court system allowed this to happen, but when our daughter turned 13 years old, he took her out of her hometown, never to return her. He took my baby girl at 13, and I did not see or speak to her for 2 years. Our son remained in my care. His father had contact every third weekend until when he turned 13, against a residence order, his father committed the same crime again. Whilst I was trying to file my prohibited steps order, his father had already submitted his order at Leicester Court to see my contact with my son completely withdrawn. I fought for a year to get contact with him, but to no avail, and that was 3 years ago. And I've not seen my son since he was taken from me at the age of 13. I've told these people, the police, the social services, the agencies, time and time again that this man is obsessed and he'll stop at nothing. Is he capable? Hell yes. Is he unstable? Hell yes. Will he one day petrol bomb my house? Of course he will. Do they care? Of course they don't. There comes a point in your psyche where you dig deep and dig in, knowing that this is your lot. Or you dig deep and you dig your way out. And I dug my way out, but boy did I pay the price. And I'm still paying the price. Every day is a living bereavement. I have no contact whatsoever with my babies, through absolutely no fault of my own. This is my story. I know I do not stand alone.
Sex that made me feel demeaned and oppressed regularly. Sex that had no signs of love. Sex that made me cry. Sex that made me feel deeply ashamed and disgusted with myself. Sex where he wanted to punish and discipline me. Sex where you wanted me to crawl on the floor. Sex where you wanted to drag me around by the neck. Sex where you wanted to hit me. Hit me, hit me. Sex where you never kissed me. Sex where you'd ask me to say please and thank you. Telling me the bruises turned you on. Telling me you owned my body, it was yours to do as you liked. Telling me you'd like me better if I was skinnier. Telling me I'm a slag and a whore who you didn't have to pay. Why was I addicted to the trauma? Why did I stay so long? Why did I let you do it? Why? Why? Why?
Don't believe my words. They're lies that I make up to project a good life and convince you I'm okay. Don't trust the smile. It's a facade to conceal searing pain, acute shame, sheer heartache. Don't be fooled by the laughter. It's merely an echo of the hollow insides. Don't be convinced by the clarity and order. It's an attempt to control the chaos and calm the storms brewing inside. Don't be blinded by the happiness I exude, the courage I fake, the confidence I wear, for I am broken.
I'm sure many people before me, and many more after me, will have their own story to tell. But this is my story. It's like you're being unconsciously being puppeteered by someone else. Your emotions, fears, self-doubt kicks in. And they're leading you further and further into the darkness where isolation, confusion, and depression kicks in. As if they're holding you down with your head underwater, fighting and suffocating until you've lost all thought and sanity. I've spent many years hoping that love could save me. And actually, by not loving myself first, I was giving my power away. I gave my power away to a monster. I thought she did love me, but actually she wanted to control me. She physiologically and mentally abused me. I was forever treading on eggshells because of what mood she would be in. Constantly manipulating me. Pathological liar. Narcissistic personality disorder. Suicidal, so much so that she attempted suicide. Told everyone, including her family and friends, that it was because I cheated on her. When actually it was all a lie that she'd made up. She committed credit card fraud in my name, stalked me, constantly putting me down, gaslighting and isolation. She humiliated me in front of family and friends, negatively comparing me to other people, withholding love, affection or sexual intimacy. Gave me the silent treatment for days, controlling, emotionally cold and unavailable. I was misguided and overwhelmed by the rose-tinted glasses of love to see it was domestic abuse. It's so hard to see it when you're in it, when your own feelings and emotions engulf your mind. But now I'm free to speak my truth. This is not love. It's control and manipulation. Love should help you forever grow and blossom, not withhold, control and restrain you. And please remember, before anyone else can love you, you must love yourself first.
I have lived with domestic violence within my family. I felt fear for my loved ones who experienced it. In different decades, my sister and my granddaughter lived with violent partners. My sister lived with her architect husband and 2 young children in a leafy, middle-class London commuter town. She would call me in tears. He had hit her. She was left bruised, sometimes bleeding, and bemused. She'd been to the doctors or to the hospital. In the late 60s and early 70s, these events, they just weren't discussed. I was the only person she revealed her pain to. I told her to leave him, see a lawyer. Different things were then. On the cusp of women's liberation, women's fight for autonomy. We were still owned. We were chattels. She wouldn't. She couldn't leave her husband. I felt helpless. She loved him, she said, and she stayed with him for the children. She eventually left him when my nieces were young adults and one had been beaten herself. Years later, my troubled younger granddaughter, then in her early 20s, got involved with a violent and dangerous man. He used to watch her every move. We tried to get her to leave him. They lived on one of the big Glasgow estates. Detached from the world she had grown up in, she sank into the darkness. My daughter, instead of calling the police after a beating, would get up at 3 a.m. and go round there to calm him down. He threatened other members of my family. We felt my granddaughter would die. This time, though, we shared our fears as a family with our friends and with help that had become available. When I was going through this experience with my sister, I heard a Woman's Hour programme on domestic violence. At this time, Erin Pitsey was starting Women's Aid. I heard there what I had, felt through all those troubled times, that people supporting those experiencing domestic violence needed support groups themselves. It's a very lonely, stressful experience. Things have changed from that time in the late 60s. Help really can be easily accessed online through GPs and other agencies. You do not need to be alone.
it wasn't all bad. He wasn't all bad, and I certainly wasn't always good. I got things wrong all the time. I'm pretty sure towards the end I grew increasingly cold and distant as I tried to build up a protection around me to keep him out and pretend it was okay. I was okay.
We weren't even together that long, I guess. We probably only lived together a couple of years. And even then he'd be away from time to time. And we'd keep moving because that was what he used to do. Because he'd get into an argument, start drinking, there'd be a fight, maybe the police. And sometimes he couldn't even remember what happened because he drank too much and blacked out.
I do sometimes feel that the way he treated me doesn't really warrant the definition of domestic violence. He didn't hit me that often. He never really hurt me physically, not badly. The first time we'd been play fighting and I tapped him and he slapped me back. Not really hard, it shook him up more than me, I think. I wasn't sure why, but he said that now he'd done that, he'd do it again. He told me that it was my fault, as I'd hit him first. I didn't really understand, but I knew I hadn't hit him.
Yes, there was a black eye. The worst part was probably having to walk down the line to my sewing machine past all the eyes, guessing what had happened. I was working in a factory sewing buttons onto M&S shirts. And I remember having to be there that day and feeling so exposed and so stupid. But there were other women there who did understand, who wanted to help. I could have asked for more help then. I wish I had.
Later, after we'd moved again and our son, my son, had been born, I remember a woman who worked at the shop 2 doors down asking me at the counter if we could keep the noise down, as it was not very nice to hear raised voices. I could barely speak. I wanted some help, someone to care, but she didn't care what was happening behind our door as long as we kept it quiet. I had a job at lunchtimes in a greengrocer's shop on the corner just to make some money, as he couldn't hold down a job, and he blamed me for making him feel like he had to try. Anyway, I was trying to explain how I was feeling and how unhappy I was and how he was towards me. And the other assistant told me not to worry, as it was probably my hormones. That's what happens after a pregnancy, apparently. Relationships can be tough after a baby is born, she said, so I should just carry on and make the best of it.
I felt so trapped. I just didn't see how it could ever end. I remember walking behind him on the beach. We were living down near Ilfracombe, far away from people who knew us. So this day, we were walking as we often did, barely talking, him in front of me. It was really cold with the wind blowing sand in my face. I was just following him, wondering how it could end. Would he kill me? Would I end up killing him? Or should I just start taking enough stuff, drink, whatever I could get from him to stop the pain inside? Would he behave differently if I was as drunk or stoned as him? Would he accept me or hate me more? I think he did hate me, sometimes. Always, perhaps.
Drink was his main drug, I guess, as well as constantly smoking dope. He was always hoping to get acid as a treat, but it was only when he took heroin that he was instantly nasty, really nasty, cold and cruel. With the drink, he was irritable when we couldn't afford any. But once he started drinking, he'd relax for a while and be funny and warm. Then a bottle later, and he'd be shouting and angry and critical and want to argue. I'd wait and stay quiet, just hoping He'd drink enough before the anger went any further. Once he was asleep, I could creep to bed, as quietly as I could to try and not wake him. That was the pattern most nights, if we could afford it.
He held my baby when he was crying. He held him away from me and wouldn't let me hold him, even though every part of my body was crying out to hold my son. He looked at me with disgust and wouldn't let me comfort my baby, even when I begged him. I felt I was always walking on eggshells, always. Even the good times could suddenly go badly wrong. His mood would change. The dinner would be thrown across the room. I hated that. I think he knew it. He knew how to push me down below the surface and hold me there. He spat in my face. He told me I was a hole. No more to him than a hole. That's how useful I was. I could have been any hole.
I tried to do agency care work at the beginning of my pregnancy to earn in preparation of our baby. If the curtains were drawn when I got home, I knew it would be a bad night. Had he sat there all day thinking about what he would say or do? Was he just mulling things over? If I was late, he'll be really angry. He'd accuse me of doing things without his permission, of not telling him where I was going or what I was doing. I tried to explain to him that I was helping someone who'd be short-staffed, but he wouldn't believe me. And I find myself getting home really anxious day after day because I could not get home the time he expected of me. The curtains will be drawn. There will be no light. And he'll be angry.
I'd never been overdrawn, really, until we were together. I can't remember if I gave him my PIN number. Doesn't make any difference anyway. He'd walk me to the cash point and wait, standing next to me until I'd withdrawn some money. Since before I met him, I'd always keep a tenner in my purse, just in case I got stuck somewhere and needed to get home, needed some fuel or a pint of milk perhaps late at night. One day he was going through my purse and found the £10 that I'd almost forgotten, folded up between till slips and expired special offers. He erupted in fury. He was so angry. He took it from me, of course, but it didn't stop there. And I couldn't understand why he was so furious at me. Needless to say, that was the last time I put aside my emergency fund. I'm sad that I lost my charm bracelet. I love that because my godfather had sent me a charm every year from all the places he'd visited in the Navy. I loved my godfather, so I loved that bracelet. One day it wasn't there, and he was so angry, accusing me of losing it, which I couldn't have done. He was too angry. Even now I know he must have taken it and sold it. Which is sad because my godfather's dead, and I can't retrieve that link to him. There was one charm left that I hadn't had a chance to attach to my bracelet. A pair of silver baby booties. They're on my daughter's bracelet now.
It is hard to explain, perhaps even to myself, why I didn't just run away at the start, at the first sign of anger. I even had a car then. So why didn't I just drive back to London, back to my friends and family, to explain what had been happening? I did love him at times. I thought I did. I couldn't believe it could be going so wrong. If I just loved him enough, he would see and he would care. He would stop drawing the curtains and raging, wouldn't he? I told myself when our baby was born he would be so happy, that things would change. I told myself. If I stuck by him and if I didn't back away as others had done, we'd work things out and the good days would return.
But they didn't. Every day I was tiptoeing on eggshells, never knowing when or why they might crack. And I think that was the hardest part, never being able to trust that the good mood would continue, knowing deep down that the anger would surely erupt again. The criticism, something I'd done wrong, like leaving hair in the bath after I'd washed it or undercooking a boiled egg, would provoke the shouting and the throwing and the overwhelming fury. It was the walking on eggshells which almost broke me.
It was the walking on eggshells which almost broke me.
It was the walking on eggshells which almost broke me.
It was the walking on eggshells which almost broke me.
It was the walking on eggshells which almost